Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals. We're at the end of June, but even so, I'm here to introduce some last-minute Pride Month artworks I managed to draw up. This first one is quite exciting for me since it's actually a redraw of an artwork I made all the way back in 2021. That was back to the early stages of my digital art journey, I guess you could say. Especially since I was still drawing on my phone with one of those universal stylus kind of things. It was from my earlier days of digital drawing, and I think it's also the very first Pride Month artwork I've ever made. Not that I've drawn a lot, but this one definitely scores a significant title as the very first. Honestly, I don't know how I got the idea for this one. I read the caption I wrote on the post for the original artwork, and all it said was that I thought this was a clever idea, which I do still agree with. I think having a rainbow phoenix with some feathers scattered around that just so happen to be other pride flags is a very fun, clever idea. I might have to give my past self a pat on the back for this one. Good job, self. But anyways, I wanted to redraw this for this Pride Month. I was actually planning on redrawing this along with another pride-themed artwork of my persona, but I got very frustrated drawing that one for some reason. And because I wanted to save time since it's the end of June, I decided to just scrap that one and redraw this Phoenix artwork instead. I might revisit that artwork in the future though, but for now, I just made sure to redraw this Phoenix fella. The basic idea for this illustration is to have a colorful phoenix at the center, surrounded by some Pride Month themed feathers and a rainbow heart in the background. I made a couple of decisions for this redraw. One being to make the phoenix look a lot more like an actual bird, rather than just a blob with wings like in the original one. You can tell I didn't know how to draw a bird back then, and honestly, I still don't know how to draw birds properly now, but at least I can fake it till I make it better this time. I had a couple of phoenix art references up too, so I think that helped. I also wanted the phoenix to be quite fluffy looking. At one point, I was debating whether or not to put a rainbow arc in between the wings, since there was some empty space above the phoenix's head. But then I decided not to add that rainbow arc since I thought it would overcrowd things. I didn't notice at first though, but apparently, past me also had the same idea with the rainbow arc, but instead added this low opacity arc between the wings instead. That same spot was where the text was in the original, which I also decided to cut since I thought it looked a bit tacky. I ended up just moving the heart shape higher to fill up a bit of that empty space. One thing you might also notice is that there are actually less feathers in this redraw compared to the original. I had a few reasons for that. One was just because I didn't know how to position all of the feathers without it clashing with the silhouette of the phoenix. And another reason was because I wanted to only draw the flags I was able to include in my previous Pride-themed artworks. So, meaning to say, from 10 feather flags before, there's now only 8. Trust me, it wasn't me removing some of the feathers because I didn't like the flags or anything, although I do admit I'm not too familiar with the 2 flags I removed. I think one is the demigirl flag and the other is probably polysexual. I also made some changes to the heart in the background. I think what I originally did was just draw a heart shape, make a layer on top of it, swipe the colors on with a screen blending mode, then blur it all out. It made it look so flat now that I look at it, so I changed it up to a more kind of heart-shaped spiral, but it's not actually a spiral, where the top color of the rainbow would be on the outside, and it would continue on until the bottom color is in the very center, which you obviously couldn't see anyway since it's getting covered up by the phoenix. But that was the idea. For the background, I admit I was wondering what color to use for it, since in the original it's just white, but I ultimately went with a simple off-white kind of cream color, which is the same color as the background for my previous video's thumbnail. The rest of the piece is already colorful enough, so it would probably hurt my eyes with the brightness if it's all rainbow and colorful and wow. But I also think that helped make everything else stand out, since Pride Month color palettes are usually very bright anyways. Other than that, I used a sort of almost painterly crayon-like triangle brush for some of the other effects. And that's actually the same brush that I used for the original piece, believe it or not. I actually took screenshots of the brush tips from like PixArt Color, which was the app I used on my phone, and then I just modified it into my own brush that I admittedly rarely use on Krita. But yeah, anyways, I managed to make things look a bit simpler, a bit cleaner, and a lot brighter as well, in my opinion. I think it's something to do with the fact that I was working on a phone, but pretty much all of the artworks I made using my phone have a very light, pale color palette. It might be my phone's screen or color settings, or I just hadn't realized how pale the colors I used looked until after I started drawing on a laptop. But overall, I really like how this turned out. I think it's a real step up from the original, and a subtle example of less is more, basically. I really miss doing redraws and seeing my progress over the years. But with that said, let's move on to the other artworks. This set of artworks are a bunch of Redbubble and TeePublic designs of the same phoenix from before. I had this idea of the phoenix holding a big pride flag, but then I thought, why not just make it a big feather? So that's what I did. I am pretty much leaning onto this feather pride flag idea or aesthetic. I think it's pretty nice. You might see at the start I made the feather just green with purple line art. And that was because in order to use it as a base, I wanted to use bright, almost neon colors. So when I use a color selection tool, it would easily select those colors and I could basically use it as a green screen to isolate the area I want to change the color of the feather to, as I please without bothering the other parts of the drawing. Same thing with the purple line art. You probably can't quite see it that much though, since the speed paint is going a mile a minute. I also added this small heart to the side just to fill up some empty space. At first I thought I'd just keep it as a rainbow colored heart, but at some point I thought of making it the same color as the feather our phoenix buddy is holding up. So it turned out similarly to the colors of the Pride Cat illustrations I did before. It also made things a bit more cohesive, I think. At first I used the symmetry tool to make the coloring for the heart perfectly symmetrical, because I thought I'd only be doing it once. But when I had to color the heart based on the other flags, I thought, just stop trying to make it perfect and just draw it by hand. Also because I was losing patience and I wanted to get things done quicker, so yeah. One thing I noticed as I was nearly finished with this whole set is that the phoenix ended up looking a lot chunkier and a lot rounder than in the redraw illustration. And the wings are far too small. You'd think that with a majestic phoenix with a large wingspan, the wings would cover a significant amount of the body when it's just down and resting. And yet here we are with a chunky phoenix and small wings. It's fine though, I was nearly finished with the whole set by the time I noticed it, so I couldn't really make any changes. Let's just think that this is a version of the phoenix where it's just a small phoenix chick without a fully developed wingspan yet. Yep, that's right, let's go with that, let's pretend that's the lore. I pretty much used the same background colors as the previous Pride Month artworks I made. So yeah, there's not much else to say about this set though. It is available on Redbubble and TeePublic in the Pride Month collections, but I think I'll leave this here for now. I took a 1-week vacation right before working on these artworks and this video, so this video is a bit rushed. As always though, thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it to the end, and I hope you have a great, colorful day.